Yes, we need to talk a little bit, and I think this is going to be a shorter than the other lectures. In other words, a mini lecture. But we need to talk a few minutes about resocialization. And we mentioned previously that socialization actually goes on throughout the life cycle, throughout life in general. Uh, and it seems pretty obvious that we are learning more and more how to do skills and how the society expects us to behave as we go further and further along in life. Certainly, there are different expectations for an adolescent than there was a child, and for a young adult as there was for an adolescent, and etc. As we talked about in the stages from Eric Erickson, those psychosocial stages of development, and it goes on all the way into old age. Now, in fact, there are other, and we talked a little about the life stage development, that things can actually change according to events which occur that can happen, such as going to high school, going to college, getting married, getting a job, and these things, and obviously if they happen at different times. If one goes to college at age 14, there'll be different expectations because that's non-normative. Or if one is getting married for the third time, that would be different at age 35 or 40. That would be certainly very different than somebody who's getting married for the first time. Now, one process which needs to be looked into is this whole idea of resocialization. What is resocialization? Resocialization means that because of a particular situation, one needs to learn new norms, new modes of acting, new ways of integrating the culture or subculture that you are now presently into. And that can be because of the life stages. It can be because of different events. Or it could be something not because of life stage, but because of something imposed upon from the outside. So if we talk about resocialization, we actually talk about a process of discarding values and behaviors that are unsuited to a new situation and a new circumstance, and replacing them with new situations and new, more appropriate values and norms and mores and manners of behaving and understanding. Now, there are actually two different types of resocialization. We can categorize them as either voluntary resocialization or involuntary resocialization. What would be the idea of a voluntary resocialization? Well, let's say you get married. Then one needs to learn new modes of behavior, new means of actually relating to society and that which goes along with all that. Or if one goes to college and becomes a student after being at work or something like that, then one has to find new means of adjusting to the expectations of being a student, or those types of new situations. Going to work, that would be a new type of resocialization, which is voluntary. Nobody forces you to go get a job. The society, as sociologists, we certainly say that you do not have a choice because the society actually molds you in a way that you're going to get a particular type of job. But those are voluntary socializations or resocializations. Even more interesting and more important and more intensely studied would be the involuntary socializations, which have been particularly studied by a fellow named Irving Goffman, and he talked about a wide range of involuntary, but particularly in something which is called a total institution. And what is this, a total institution? A total institution is a place that has complete control over your environment. So, for instance, if somebody were to be arrested and thrown into jail or imprisoned, incarcerated for a penitentiary, then all of a sudden there are a whole new set of behaviors and expectations and social contracts which need to be a previous way of behavior is thrown out, and new ways. Generally speaking, in total institutions, there are stages where your identity is taken away from you. It's called, or Goffman calls this a process of mortification. They kill off your old identity, take away your civilian clothes, give you a number. Well, in American, not necessarily, but in many places they do. They take away. You now have a set schedule. You can't choose what time you take your shower, what time you're going to bed, what time you're getting up, what time you're having your meals, what time, etc., all throughout. Now, although a total institution also can be either voluntary or involuntary, because what happens if somebody, for instance, joins a monastery? That would be a voluntary total institution, resocialization through a voluntary a total reinstitution. Or if yeah, okay, so some people say marriage is the same sort of thing, but I don't think so. I certainly hope not. But it would be, what about in state mental institutions, for instance, state mental hospitals? It certainly is like that. Or even generally in a hospital, you don't get much of a choice. And you have to get used to this. And that would be an involuntary, similar to a prison. So in that sense, a state mental hospital is a involuntary total institution. You do not have your choice of when and where you're going to be doing. Everything is organized around these the organization, which gives that particular time and place. So they have to shed your old ways of thinking, your old ways of behaving, and adapt to those possibilities. And these are actually used. How the processes are very well studied, a very interesting study in the sociological literature, because obviously there's a lot of time and money put into jails. But it's also, this resocialization can be something which happens on a historical factor, such as when people have to relearn their gender roles, resocialize their gender roles because of various changes in the society, or because of marital situations, or marital economics. For instance, you might have a situation, and I've had this professionally, that a couple got married assuming that the man would be the breadwinner and the woman would be the homemaker. And because of their particular professions, he was an aspiring film producer, and she had the background of being a lawyer, a corporate lawyer. So she had the ability to bring in a lot more money than he did, and he was very much struggling to bring in enough money to put food on the table. And as they had children, and 3 or 4 or 5 children they had, and she was not willing to resocialize, and neither was he. So as a result, the strain and the pressure for not resocializing became a real factor in their marriage and eventually in their divorce. So these are factors that we can look at in the resocialization process. It could happen in the 1970s, the society, or in the late 60s and the early 70s, when the resocialization of gender roles was a very difficult thing, where men were in the 50s and 60s, the same situation I was talking about. They were expected to be the breadwinners, and with the new feminist movement that happened during the late 60s, and women began to see their roles as different. The men were not resocializing as fast, and we had a great amount of divorces within the society because of this lack of resocialization. And these are things which are important concepts to study and to learn about.